like to call the meeting of the Carson City Open Space Advisory Committee to order. It's Monday, June 18th. The time is 5:30. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Chairperson Scott.
Here.
Vice Chair Welch.
Here.
Member Evans.
Here.
Member Hall.
Here.
Member Inverson.
Here.
Member Masad.
Here.
Member Michael.
Here.
Ex officio member Filson. Absent? A quorum's present.
Thank you. Public comments. Are there any public comments at this time regarding items that are not on the agenda? Please introduce yourself and welcome to the meeting.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jeanette Bloom. I am a resident of Clear Creek Canyon, and I want to make a comment on something that was on your last agenda in February. It was item 3C. There was a discussion about the Clear Creek Youth Camp and recommending to the Board of Supervisors that the Forest Legacy Program, that an application would be made to the Forest Legacy Program to acquire that 100 acres. And first of all, I want to say I appreciate this committee's commitment to trying to keep the youth camp open space and prevent its development. But my question is that there was a motion that this be submitted to the Board of Supervisors, and it seemed to me from reading the staff report that there was some urgency for this matter to go before the board, as the application deadline for the Forest Legacy Grant was May and June of this year. It has not been presented to the board, and I'm just curious as to why it hasn't gone before the board. And also, I would like to be kept informed of it because I'd like to support this project before the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I think, unfortunately, this is not an agenda item, and at this point, what we can do is take your comments and perhaps ask if you would follow up with staff or vice versa, because we're not in a position where we can discuss it at this point.
I called staff first, and the response I got was more or less, these things take time, and that there's a lot of work to be done on it. But it is June, the deadline's passed, I assume. The indication I was given by staff is don't expect anything anytime soon. That is not an exact quote. They're very polite, but that's what I got out of it. So I just want to make sure that this committee knows it hasn't gone before the Board of Supervisors and that it's still with your staff.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And as you may recall from the last meeting, the committee was quite supportive of that. So we will continue to work with staff. There's a lot of deadlines involved and a lot of other things that are part of this process. So we appreciate your comment, and it's noted and well taken. Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, modifications, I'm sorry. We have the minutes of our February 26th, 2018 meeting. Are there any comments, corrections, or discussion regarding the minutes of the February 28th meeting?
Chairman?
Yes. Donna.
Everything's mixed up to here. I just have one on page 4. Joanna Foster's comments. It's the Eagle Valley Trails Committee, not association. It was correct in all the rest of the minutes.
Okay. Anything else? All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, accept the minutes as minorly amended. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, modifications to the agenda. We do have I'll mention one item. Ann Bollinger at the last minute has been called out of town on a family emergency situation. And so for item 3E, we're going to have discussion and public comment, but we're not going to make that an action item. We want to have Ann back with us in order to complete that at the next meeting. It's not a super time-critical item, and I think it's going to be important to have Ann as part of that discussion. So the only other thing, I see we have different legal counsel tonight.
Kristen Lewis for the District Attorney's Office. I'm filling in until Mr. Woodbury can get here.
Thank you, Kristen. When he comes, you can let him know that you're a much more pleasant substitute, and we'll consider him to be the second string.
Thank you, I will.
Okay, any other modifications to the agenda? Okay. Item 3A, possible action to elect a chairperson and vice chairperson for the Open Space Advisory Committee for 2018. We're only halfway through. Any discussion? Would anybody like to be more actively involved in the committee chairmanship or vice chairmanship, or does anybody have any thoughts or ideas on that? I will open it up to the committee.
I think that the chairperson and vice chairperson that we have are doing an excellent job.
I agree. I think we'd be hard pressed to find the leadership to replace you two. And I, for one, appreciate the borderline snarky response, witty, that you bring to the meetings, and hope that continues.
Let's take any other committee input, and then we'll have public input.
Was there a motion?
No motion, not yet. Okay, thank you for the comments. We'll open it up to public comment, and is there any public comment? Thank you, Kristen. We're sorry to see you go. Okay, is there a motion?
I move to nominate Bruce Scott as chairperson and Alan Welch as vice chairperson for the Open Space Advisory Committee for 2018.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Snarky. I'll have to remember that.
I just hope you two are okay with it. I don't think we actually asked.
Too late.
Yeah,
It's official.
I think we're probably okay for now, so. Our schedule is more relaxed than it used to be with the recent changes in the committee situation. I know Alan is happy to help, and I'm happy to help, so please feel free to let us know what you need, what your concerns are, or what we can, how we can help make things move along any better. So, okay, item 3B, discussion only regarding Kincaid Peternell, is that how you say it?
It's Peternell.
Peternell, excuse me, Eagle Scout project for the Foothill and V&T trails between Carson Tahoe Health Campus and the Lakeview subdivision. Greg, are you going to present that one?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Come on forward.
In open space, we love Eagle projects, and so I'd like to introduce Kincaid Peternell who has a presentation on our latest project. It's going to be a great project.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Feel free to sit down, and Kincaid, and when you're talking, just push the button so the red light lights. And can you outline for us briefly what your project is?
So recently there was a recently new trail built called the Foothill Trail that runs along the backside of the Carson Cancer Center to Lakeview. And along those trails, there are 2 creek crossings, and my Eagle Scout project is going to be to build 2 bridges across them, so people will be able to easily access it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I apologize, we don't have the PowerPoint up yet.
Okay, we'll take just a minute, see if we can get the PowerPoint. In the meantime, there's been quite a bit of activity in that area over the last couple of months, and National Trails Day ceremony and pictures in the paper, and the chairman is on vacation, wasn't attending, but well, talk to us a little bit while they're fussing with that, Kincaid, and we'll get a little bit more idea. This is the 2 crossings of the creek in the Eagle Valley Children's Home property?
Yes.
Okay. And you're building some small bridges to do that?
Yes, we're going to build a hybrid bridge of a Type 2 and Type 3 puncheon.
Type 2 and Type 3 which?
Puncheon, it's a type of bridge.
I should know that, but I don't.
That one's new to me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. What's your schedule? You may have to give this in question and answer form instead of PowerPoint, but that's okay.
Yeah, we have a paper copy of the PowerPoint up there that you can look through.
Great.
But our schedule is we're planning to do the actual, before we actually do the putting together the bridge, the day before we're going to go and pre-cut everything so it's easier for the Boy Scouts to assemble them. And then I think July 8th is the actual date we're going, 7th? July 7th is the actual date we're going to put it all together, have the Boy Scouts come drill everything and secure it.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate the Eagle Scout programs or the Eagle Scout projects, as Greg said, and thank you very much for adding to our trail system. You know, we're making progress. It's small bits at a time. Sometimes they're a little bit bigger, but this is an important piece. The crossing of the creek is going to be real important for a number of folks who are maybe a little more limited in their ability to navigate in an area like that where it's a bit wet or can be kind of more difficult. So, yeah, go ahead, Margie.
Kincaid, where are you getting your materials? Is Open Space providing them, or have you got donations? How's that working?
So the what we're planning to do is we're going to use 2 utility poles cut in half for the top of the bridge, but the rest of it is I'm hoping to get supplied by Open Space.
Is there anything that you need that you don't have yet?
Yeah, just the materials from Meeks. Meeks is the suppliers for the materials that I am hoping to use, and that's all we need right now.
Have you worked with Greg on the material list and what you need?
Yes.
Because we are really good at providing materials for projects like this. We really appreciate the labor.
Yes. So we already have the utility poles that are already there. Those are the already donated by Nevada Energy now. And there should be a detailed material list, I think, in the PowerPoint that will.
There's a PowerPoint circulating here, so.
That is what we need.
Okay. Are there any questions of Kincaid or any questions regarding the project?
Sure, I got one.
Go ahead, Chairman.
Kincaid, I'm not familiar with the creek. Is it a perennial creek? Is it always got water in it?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, up there.
So I'm curious about the. Go ahead.
Is a creek that always has water. Another one sometimes will not have water in it.
The follow-up, I just was curious about design considerations that you guys might have for years where we might have a lot of runoff and, flooding considerations, do you guys are considering like building up like a buttress or some sort of a footing to elevate the deck of the bridge?
Yeah. I believe we have it made so that if it actually does flood, it'll just float above, and so we can retrieve it. Flooding has been taken into consideration.
Great.
Just by way of information, one of the reasons that a part of this creek is more perennial than annual is it emanates from a mine shaft that's back in there. And so there's not a huge watershed above it. There is certainly some watershed, and flooding is a consideration, but it's not quite like you might expect in a typical larger watershed area. But, the ability to pass larger flows is, I think, important. So go ahead, and why don't you pick up any pieces we've missed, Kincaid, and highlight, if you will, anything, so we can make sure we get the benefit of the effort that's been put into the PowerPoint.
So for this, the project background, it just simply explains how there's recently a new trail running across their creeks along the way, and how this trail would not only be for the general use, but workers have talked about how they would like to use it for walking from Lakeview to the hospitals, instead of having to drive on the highway or all the way around the mountain, as well as it being a potential medical walk. And if you can see, that's a Type 2 and Type 3 Puncheon, which we are planning to do a hybrid of it, which is represented in the drawing below. And we have some pictures of the sites. Here's the first one. This is the second one. Then we have drone views of both sites, if you would like to see that. Yeah, let's go on. Then we have another drone video. Yeah. So I'd say we just move on from this to the next one. So I already made a few calls reaching materials, and the utility bill, like I said, have already been donated. I've talked to Meeks to see what they are able to donate, and we think the project will be completed by July 7th. So, as Boy Scout, I have to give leadership to a few boys. I'll need around 8 to 12 boys as well as 3 to 5 adults for this. And I plan to recruit them by asking them to come during the open presentations of our Boy Scout meetings, which one is actually scheduled for today, later. So the materials are 4 telephone poles donated. We need 6 railroad ties, 32 2x6x16 pressure treated lumber, 12 long concrete rakes, 4 or 5 pound boxes of 3-inch screws, and 24 5-inch lag bolts with washers. And supplies, safety glasses, gloves, water, pizza.
Lots of pizza.
Yeah. Tools we're going to use are shovels, rakes, saws, drills, screw guns, sledgehammers, and a chainsaw. And permits, we need the Carson City Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department approval, troop approval, council approval for Boy Scouts, as well as project completion. Now, here's the estimation of what it will cost. Materials will cost that much, as well as the supplies. The supplies will be bought by me. So the material will be paid by Carson City's Parks and Recreation and Open Space Department. Utility bills will be noted by NV Energy, and the material price quotes by Meeks will be this, and we giving a discount. So the phases are research, planning, and getting approval. And then after that, I get approval from here. We will move on to preparing the materials, getting everything set and ready for being able to build the bridge, and then I will give my Eagle Scout report on what happened. So the materials will be delivered close to the area. The rest will have to be carried in. Everyone will be meeting on site at Lakeview, July at 8 a.m. It should take about 5 to 7 hours to complete both bridges. Tools will be brought in by the parents and others who have donated tools. They will be brought into build site by scouts. I will need a troop activity plan. Most materials will be supplied by the city, some to be donated. Food and drinks will be supplied by me. Safety issues up there is snakes. We saw a snake walking on the trail.
Really?
Yes.
No rattlesnake.
No rattlesnake.
Not yet.
Splinters, dehydration, heat stroke, sunburn, cuts, and appendages getting crushed under the heavy material or sledgehammer. So the following things you need to do is get a finalized detailed material list, to have a food plan to put together, to make sure I have enough volunteers, and to make sure all the tools are in proper working condition before execution. Are there any questions or concerns?
Comments from the committee? Margie, did you have something?
Okay, you look like a strapping young man, and I don't mean to cast aspersions, but this chainsaw business, who's going to be operating the chainsaw?
That's going to be the adults.
Okay, all right. Adults, you know proper safety? Okay. Appendage just getting crushed isn't my only concern.
Okay, Donna?
It's a great project, Kincaid, and really we're looking forward to it because this is going to connect the V&T to the hospital. Everybody knows the V&T is my baby. But I did want to say something to staff. If you look at your staff report, you got a little mixed up and you've got Prison Hill stuff on there. Just wanted to make sure you knew that. Great project, though.
Any other comments?
Hi, I have, if you can't get anybody to donate the railroad ties, I just ripped out a bunch from my yard. I'll give you a card before you leave, and if you can't find them or you want to come by and grab them, you can do that, so.
Thank you.
Great, Jerry, that's real helpful. And Greg, would you ensure that, and I know you do, but just to confirm, any donations are recognized as part of the big picture?
Yes, absolutely, we'll do that.
Okay, any public comment? All right, this is not an action item. Kincaid, you're on your way. Just keep Greg happy and you're set.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. That's great.
Job well done navigating the technical issues too. It's not an uncommon problem as you continue to do these
Right.
kinds of things.
And somewhat belatedly, but thankfully, Jason, it's nice to see you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Good to be here.
We'll try to keep this short and to the point so we can get you out of here early. Okay, next item, 3C. Is Nancy Santos here? I don't see Nancy. Have you heard anything from her, or is there somebody else to make that report?
Mr. Chair, I just got a message that Nancy might not be able to make it, so we might need to table this item.
Okay, that is a presentation and discussion. We'll table that and pick it up when Friends of the Silver Saddle is ready.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion only. Update on water rights transactions associated with the Old Buzzy's Ranch, Ann Bollinger and Bruce Scott. With Ann not being here, I guess that falls to me. I think we talked briefly before about the fact that the water rights associated with the Buzzy's Ranch portion of the property down there, not the Mickey Anderson portion, but the James Gerard portion. Those water rights were pending removal to Dayton for some time, several years. They were approved and permitted in Dayton, thereby, stripping probably 2/3 of the irrigated area down there north of River Road from the water rights. And because I talked with the federal water master and I talked with the state engineer's office, and I talked with Vidler Water Company, and they agreed to allow a temporary application to move the water back to its original decreed location, which is on Buzzy's Ranch, for the current calendar year, to allow that area to stay green and to have irrigation. And we've talked before about the fact that long-term we have to be looking to find water rights for that area, but the short-term, through the cooperation of a number of parties, we have that in place for this year. And Open Space paid for the cost of the transfer, which is a temporary transfer, which is application fees and permit fees. But the rest of it was done as something that I felt was important for Open Space. And so we did the process, the applications, and filed them in our office at no charge. So.
I have one question.
Yes, Donna.
You probably said, but for how long is this for?
A temporary permit is a 1-year permit.
So we're still under the gun to find other water?
We do not have a long-term solution. I will tell you that Vidler Water Company has pending applications to put water back into this area. Not quite as much water as came out, but I think for next year, hopefully, we'll have a little different kind of solution that will still be temporary, but maybe a little bit longer term than year to year. So, any other questions or public comment? Yes, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to thank the chair for all of his help on this. The city doesn't have a water rights manager, so we really benefit from your expertise and taking the time to help us at no charge to make this happen and help us figure out some long-term solutions. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to do it. It's close to my heart. Also, I look at it out my window, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
So 2/3 of the water rights are allocated to Dayton, or they
Yep.
will be eventually? And
Yes.
who owns the other third?
Mickey Anderson, and they are still pertinent to the property that we own, which is the westerly portion of what was Buzzy's Ranch. They are for sale. We have, we've not actively pursued the sale because, at least historically, the asking price was pretty significant and probably more than an appraisal would justify. So we are going to have to make, I think, some serious efforts in the next few months to try to at least see, we have some possible grants that we might apply for that have the ability to potentially provide water. Ducks Unlimited has indicated some interest, and that's an area that we'll be working on to try to see if we can firm up a longer-term water supply. Any other questions or comments?
How many acre feet are you looking for?
It's about 700, I think.
700.
It's a big chunk. It's irrigation, but it's a pretty good sized chunk. And one of the things that I envision doing is with a better conservation plan and irrigation plan on the Buzzy's Ranch portion, we can probably reduce the number of acres of irrigated land below what was decreed and still have, in essence, 100% of what the ranch does now.
Steal some for, can you ship it across the road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, any public comment? Anything else? Okay, item 3E is the work plan discussion regarding staff projects and priorities and a request to amend the budget allocations in the amount of $55,000 for fiscal year 2018-2019. As I mentioned earlier tonight, we will have discussion on this to the extent that the committee would like to discuss it, but at Ann's request and in discussion with Jennifer, we will, although we've talked about some of this, we will bring it back when Ann is available at the next budget. So I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at the handout. There's a lot of stuff in there. The $55,000 basically is a pickup truck and an ATV in terms of what this would be, but we're not, we're in a position where that is in our budget but not allocated that way. So we can talk about that later on. If there's a desire to make that adjustment or request, that can be accomplished without waiting to the next budget period. We would just have to get approval to reallocate the funds.
Do there have to be any safety issues addressed with an ATV? I know for the state, we have to go through a training if we want to use the ATV.
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. There is training. We actually had several staff go through state training, ATV training, just a week ago. So it's something we provide on a regular basis. I know earlier you made a comment about chainsaws. We have chainsaw training with the Nevada Division of Forestry, and we do a myriad of training depending on the task or the skill.
Okay, any discussion items, questions, or anything you want to bring up at this point from the package that came with our agenda? Think about that. Oh, Margie, go ahead.
I just want to thank staff for putting together such a great package. I really appreciated the way it was looking, it was projecting down the way, and if we acquired all of the land under consideration and the staffing needs, I very much am grateful that we have an open space maintenance coordinator now. I'm excited to see how that works and what kinds of things he gets done. I'm very glad about it.
Thank you, Margie. Our open space coordinator would have been here by invitation tonight, but he's not available. So hopefully he'll be able to join us at our next meeting, just so we know who he is. And he's had, people I think are very pleased with the work he's done in the short time he's been here. So it's really encouraging. I think we really are developing a great open space staff.
I have one question.
Yes.
I've probably heard this before, but when the water rights thing made me stop and think about it. Where does the water come from for Silver Saddle Ranch for like the red house in that area?
Go ahead, Margie.
It's actually on a well, and Ann and I and Kelly Hale with the city have looked at the potential of perhaps using it as a public water system source. They're looking at what it would take, how much water is needed, how many visitors, and what upgrades it would need to meet current regulatory. Okay.
So then the planned landscaping improvements would come off that well water? There's like enough coming out of that well to meet those needs? Okay, great.
We do have the potential for ditch water as well for landscaping, but our ability to do much at Silver Saddle has been somewhat restricted by historic preservation considerations, and we have some homework that needs to be done with regard to the water system once we get a clear green light on the whole issue of what we can do there and what limitations there are from historic preservation. So there's definitely some things that are going to need to be done, but we are on a domestic well there.
Bruce, do you know if the second well on the property is approved for use? Does it have water rights associated with it?
Mr. Chairman, but before we get too much further down the road, I'm perceiving this isn't related to this item that we're actually talking about. It's about the previous item?
It's kind of a combination of the two, but
Okay.
It probably stretches the agenda just a bit.
If you could just formally, if you want to reopen that previous item for discussion with this item, it'll make for a better record. If
Okay, we will broaden the discussion here on budget to include any follow-up questions or conversation with respect to the water rights that we addressed for the for this area, this portion of our open space in Carson City. Okay, back to the question.
There's a second well out a little bit south of the house and over beyond the hay barn. I just wonder if has it been officially abandoned? It hasn't been abandoned. It's still there. I just wonder if we have any water rights on it.
The short answer is no.
Okay.
That's part of the housekeeping that will need to be done.
Okay.
Okay, further discussion with regard to budgets or anything more on the water issue? All right, any public comment? Okay, hearing none, that will move. We'll ask that that be included in our next agenda for follow-up and possible action. Okay, staff updates. Item 4A. We have a pretty comprehensive summary in the general discussion. I don't know, is there anything there, Jen, that you would like to highlight? I don't know that we need to go through each item unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I did just want to acknowledge staff and how successful the public meetings for the Prison Hill grant have gone. I went to a couple of the public meetings. They were very well attended, really robust, healthy discussion on people's concerns and what they'd like to see in the future. Really good solution-based approaches that was really refreshing, I think, from the public. I'm really excited to see where this goes forward, and I think it'll be a great tool for the staff to be able to implement and help reduce impacts to especially the neighboring properties. So we're not, even near to the final stages of it yet, but it's been a really good process so far, and I did want to thank especially Greg and Ann for all their hard work on that.
Thank you. Committee comments or questions? Donna, did you have, or Margie?
Margie and I have some comments regarding the website stuff, so.
No, I have some, I actually have something regarding the OHV program. Ann reached out asking if there were any members of Open Space that were interested in working on it. And I specifically am interested. My only concern is time constraints. And I understand that Alan is interested in working on it. So we will be on a working group for that OHV motor management plan on the motorized or the process. Just wanted to bring that up to everyone.
Great. Donna?
Okay, on the website, Margie brought up, and this was a concern when we first started improving the website, is that you had to go through a lot of screens to find open space, and that's still happening, and I agree with you on that. So if there's any way we can split out parks and open space a little bit better on the first page so that it's easy to get to. You have to go into parks, and then from parks you go into, a couple of pages before you find open space. The other thing is I still would like to see more done on each open space site. Like the Carson River Canyon, it now says when it was purchased, but it does not indicate how much was money that came out of the Question 18, the Quality of Life Initiative, and how much was from grants that we acquired. I think it's important that the public have the opportunity to see that we have not just been taking their money and just blowing it on everything. I mean, I've had some remarks over when we were talking about joining Parks and Rec and Open Spaces, that, Open Space has gotten all this money, and what have we done with it? And we just spend it on on land like crazy, and we're indiscriminate, and I think they need to understand that we've actually leveraged the quality of life funds quite a bit in order to acquire the lands that we have. And I think having that on each page right there up front, where when they look at an open space site, they can say, oh, it costs so much, and so much came from grants, and so much came from the quality of life, would be important.
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I believe you've met with our AmeriCorps, right? We have her through the end of July. So if we're going to be making these final changes, we're trying to fill her position for the next year as well, but it takes time to get these AmeriCorps on, as you know. She's done amazing things with the website, but it's still a work in progress. But I can mention these comments to her. I think part of, with her updating the open space pages is they actually have to be written. You know, she can't write it. She doesn't have the background, the history. The open space staff has to be able to provide that information for her to post on the website. So I think a lot of it is staff availability to get to that for that piece of it. But as far as drilling down and how many steps it takes, we can work with her on that before she leaves.
Thank you, Jennifer. Alan?
I think this is the first time we've had on our list naming the open space properties, and if so, it seems like it would be useful to have a presentation or, a discussion of what that's going to consist of. And I think Jeremy's heading that up.
Yep, Alan, you beat me to the gun there. Ann and Alan have approached me and asked me to lead the effort to lead a working group to name all of our properties. And I've asked Ann to put together some material for me so that I can assemble some data. I'd like a list of all of our properties. I do have access to the spatial data, so I know where everything's located. But I'd like a complete spreadsheet of the properties, and pictures of those properties would be good. And then I've just sort of been brainstorming some ideas of how we might go about doing it. I have some folks in mind who could be part of this group that I haven't reached out to yet. One of the folks that I would like to reach out to is Daryl Cruz of the Washoe Tribe, to get him very closely involved, because it seems like the first effort that we had to name the properties may have been a little rushed, and we didn't provide enough opportunity for folks to provide input. So one of my ideas is, I believe some of this information was presented to the public in the form of the newspaper. We could try that again. One thing, it's a lot of work though. If you think about saying, just presenting to everybody, here's a list of all of our stuff. Here's a list of potential names for all that stuff. Now let's vote on all of it. It's just a lot of work for folks to really dive into. So my thought was maybe we could focus on a subject group of folks, and I'd like to figure out from you guys how best to do that. If you think that's a good idea, we could have a sample that we send out, like a questionnaire, to several folks in the community. Perhaps that selection is created through outreach like the paper and public and media outlets of like who wants to be interested. If you want to be interested, great. Then here's the stuff that we need to address to kind of focus the group to see what kinds of ideas that we can get to narrow down the list of potential names for these properties. So that's just some thoughts, because I know that just presenting here's all of our stuff, now let's vote on everything. I don't think the outcome is going to be all that. It's going to be all that great. So I'm open to suggestions, and if anybody would like to join me in the effort, please do so.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. As I recall, there was a request before our last meeting in February that was basically asking for input on open space names, and that's part of what came to our last meeting, which caused us to think maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. And so that's where Jeremy came in, and the fact that you have a good cultural background that can be very helpful in maybe picking what might be appropriate alternatives for some of these sites. So is there anybody from a working group perspective that would like to join Jeremy in trying to amass some of this information and bring something back to the committee, as a group?
Well,
Joanne?
I have two things. First, I guess to answer that, I would help. I could be on that committee. But the other, my thought is, you're reaching out through the paper, and maybe we should continue to do that. But even at our events, such as the one just where I saw you at Silver Saddle Ranch, it was well attended. There were booths, and the whole premise of it was to get people engaged in these different activities. At some of those sponsored events and public, the public events, we could have information on 2 or 3 or 4, whichever properties we're looking at, and just a little bit of their history, and then let people suggest names.
What if we have Joanne and Jeremy as our subgroup, for lack of a better term, to take the lead and pursue that? And probably the best thing there, I think Ann has, and I don't know if Lindsay's been involved in that, but Ann may have some of the background that would allow you to get at least what has been assembled or what has been offered to date. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just might offer to this group that's forming, we have our website available. We have a pretty decent social media following now that we've had our AmeriCorps support, and we also have our activity guide that goes out. We've struggled in the past with the reach of the paper. It reaches a very specific audience, so to really reach the entire community, you kind of have to go through a lot of different multimedia. Our activity guide goes out in every issue of the paper. I think it's about a 12,000 person reach. For that, we can incorporate it in that, and any other programs or events. A lot of the recreation programs is a great outreach, not just in our parks, but we have our Junior Ranger program. It might be great to engage youth for some of the locations to be involved. I think there's a lot of different avenues at our disposal that are pretty low cost.
Great, thank you. This is a fairly broad topic on working groups. Is there any public comment? Anything? Yes. Can you, excuse me?
My name is Ron Moe. I live on the south end of town. I like to hike up Prison Hill. And anyway, excuse me, Chairman Scott, Jennifer, the board. Appreciate all you've done, and especially getting someone in to check on the OHV management plan. Anyway, my big concern is, which I don't think was ever checked by the BLM, and are the birds and the prominent rocks. And the birds would like to gaze out over there. And I think of Golden Eagle Lane, and there's prominent rock up there, and it's on a Cal Topo map 5411. But so I started hiking the south end of Prison Hill maybe a dozen years ago, and every year I would see at least a few times golden eagles up on this rock 5411. Up to 6 or 7 times. This would be from the start of the calving season, third week in January through mid-March, maybe third week in March. And it was just, to me, for here, a town like this, to see golden eagles, and I'd see them every year, until the last 3 years. And it's the encroachment of these rocks, by the OHVers. And with this encroachment, especially at this rock, here comes the graffiti. Here comes the shells from the shooting. Here's the trash. And it's just, I wanted you to know that it concerns me, and I think it should concern all of Carson City, that here were these golden eagles every year that would come up, perch, overlook, and I haven't seen them in the last 3 years. And I just would like you to understand that, because I know you will go over the management plan of the OHV area, that there's been this degradation, and even the BLM mission to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of public lands for the youth and enjoyment of present and future generations. Anyway, I'm nervous as hell. But it's a concern to me, and I think it should be a concern for all of Carson, that somehow there's a problem here, and there needs to be space from these rocks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Have you made any inputs to the planning process for the OHV project?
Yes.
At this point? Have they been made aware of this?
Yes, but I wanted you to be also aware.
Oh, no, and I appreciate the committee, being informed and your concern, but it will help immensely if we're ensured that that input has already been provided as part of the process that's ongoing now.
Right. It's not something that someone sees right now. It's just, here's the way things were, and here's how it's changed since this OHV promotion.
No, we understand, and of course, as you're aware, we inherited that with the purchase of the Silver Saddle, or with the acquisition of the Silver Saddle, so
I hear you and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other public comment?
Ron, just 1 second.
Oh, Jerry.
Do you have a solution in mind?
One of the things I asked was a buffer zone from this area. It seemed, I don't know, here it's like here's this rock, 5411, the locals now call Graffiti Rock.
I've been up there, and I think that rock has been being used for graffiti for 30 years.
Well, I didn't notice it like it has been in the last 3 years.
So you're saying it's getting worse?
Well, people can drive right up to it now. The vegetation has been driven over its void.
And how much of a buffer zone were you looking for?
At least 50 yards. That's just an opinion. I'm no birder. I'm no conservationist. It's just concern, and I miss the birds. There's less eagles, less birds on those rocks, and those rocks go right down towards Snyder. There's some up above too. That here are the roads, trails, roads. I mean, a 1-ton truck can drive up there, and they need some sort of a buffer zone away. Anyway, appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Ron.
Thank you.
Robin.
Robin Orloff, concerned citizen, involved in Prison Hill, as you all know. And I'd like to back up what Ron is saying. Ron and I are both part of the committee. We've been to the meetings. We've expressed our opinion. We're part of the working group. I feel like the management plan folks are really listening. Alexis and Mark have been very responsive. They've responded to my specific emails about this. I think they are considering this. I haven't been able to talk to the gentleman who was on the field, boots on the ground, but I was reassured that he's aware of our concerns about the boundaries for the rocks, for the graffiti. I want to back up what Jen said about the meeting. It was impressive. I mean, it was robust. I felt the OHV folks there and the Chamber of Commerce, Visitor Bureau, people with business interests, I thought were incredibly responsible and responsive. I think they want to protect the land, and they understand that it's part of this conservation easement. I think they're going to be I think there's going to be a very cooperative effort with those folks and the concerns Ron and I have. And in terms of adjacent properties, we consider, I think Ron and I both consider one of the important adjacent properties to be the non-OHV property. And Mark and Alexis are aware. They've responded. They're working on it. They know how important it is to have a boundary that protects. I've also expressed a desire to have some of the rock outcroppings outside of the boundary. People can still access them, maybe by walking, but not driving right up to them. That would be my desire, but we're expressing that in the working groups. And I'm getting some response that's pretty positive about that. And one of the OHVers even said that they eradicate graffiti at Moon Rocks, I think it is, up on the BLM land, and they were open to doing that, which really encouraged me. And do working groups, and I think that they'll be great role models for their people and educate, so I was happy with that. I've got to say that I walk the rocks all over. I've seen more graffiti. I eradicate a lot of it that I can, the small faces that I can brush with rock or with my rock hammer. So I agree with Ron that keeping people a little bit away from those areas for the birds and for whatever is a good thing. So I think we're going to all work together. I get a good feeling from it.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you so much to you and Ron both for your participation. And it sounds like we really have two issues. One is graffiti and one is the OHV situation that perhaps meld a little bit, but keeping that in front of people is probably very important for the master planning process for the area. So, thank you. Is there,
I have a comment,
Jeremy?
Bruce. This is a question to the committee. I came to Carson just after the land exchange occurred, and my involvement has been with the cultural resources, and I know that from my perspective, there was a federal nexus which started the Section 106 process. So my question is anyone aware of a biological assessment or a BRA that has been conducted potentially as part of that land exchange that could help speak to the habitat, of bird habitat? I mean, oftentimes when I've dealt with environmental documentation, specific habitation sites are called out and avoidance is called for. So it would be great if we had that type of documentation to provide teeth to what Ron's concerns are.
I don't know offhand what assessments were done. We can certainly find out, Jeremy, but I'm not sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I was just you took the words right out of my mouth, but I can definitely check that. But it should have triggered NEPA, at least a really low-level NEPA process when they did the lands exchange. So we can find out what documentation there has been before that happened and what information might be available. I don't know offhand.
I would just say even if it's just a low-level categorical exclusion or something, it always triggers compliance with the Endangered Species Act and Migratory Bird Act and the golden eagle and bald eagle protection. There has to have been something, just like with your Section 106 reports, cultural reports.
Yeah, I know there's quite a bit of protection down along the river, but I'm not sure if this particular rock is really recognized in that same vein.
It might not have been called out specifically, but the potential for habitat golden eagle nests are monitored and off by Nevada NDOW has often records them and keeps track of them. They're pretty high profile. So I would expect if there's some there, they know, or they did know at one time and have it documented, or at least the potential for it to be habitat. I don't know, when was the transfer?
Was it 2009, 2008?
Something like that. It's been close to 10 years. Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't mentioned as potential habitat at that site.
Jen, is that something that you can have staff follow up on?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yes, Margie.
I'd like to make a couple more suggestions regarding that. The Great Basin Bird Observatory, and if it's still in operation, had extremely good inventories of bird species in the Carson area. And the Lahontan Audubon Society may, with their annual bird counts, may also have some information for you.
Thank you. Robin, did you have another comment?
Yes, please, brief one.
You only get 2 comments at this meeting. Next meeting, you're...
And thank you for your input and your suggestions about the habitat. Interestingly enough, the golden eagles have been named by a young man that goes up there who actually pointed them out to me. They're called Ralph and Martha, and they were on a rock that was in front of Graffiti Rock, where people are also driving, that's in the non-OHV area. And I've been watching them for a few years also and haven't seen them. But there are specific rocks they go to. Whether or not they nest, I don't know. But Juan Guzman took a great photo of one perched down below. So they're there.
Well,
Ralph
thank
and
you.
Martha.
And you're always welcome to make more than one comment. Okay, are there any other committee items, questions, discussion?
Yeah, I've got some.
Jerry?
I want to know what's going on with our signs.
Well, we adopted, thank you, sorry, Mr. Chair, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We did adopt our sign plan. We've started at several of our locations throughout the city to start to replace signs at various sites. If you go to our cemetery at Lone Mountain Cemetery, we've started to replace the signs there. And any new sign that is vandalized or removed or whatever, our policy is to obviously replace, but consistent with the sign plan. I don't have an implementation schedule for open space. I know you're looking at Prison Hill has been a priority for Member Masad.
Well, it's not just Prison Hill, it was kind of everything, because you had us all get on these work subcommittees to try and get something happening, and it's been a year, 14 months, and I'm just wondering what's going on, because I haven't seen anything.
Well, we don't have the funds to have signs in all the locations that we need throughout, our more than 8,000 acres in our park system, parks, trails, and open space. Greg is working on implementing a lot of our trail signage right now, like the Foothill Trail that we just constructed behind the hospital. Greg's working, he has a sign plan, and we'll be implementing that in the next month or so. So as that new trail was constructed, that signage plan will be built. I've really been pushing for Riverview Park to be updated, and we're going to get some new signage there because there's 800 signs. And no one wants to read any of the signs there, if you ask me. If there are certain locations that, I know you've been expressed, but we can't get to every location all at one time. We don't have the budget for that. However, helping prioritize those locations would be really helpful, and if you have some comment on that, I'm happy to pass it on to staff and get those going.
Well, but the big concern with Ann, when we went out and started this whole thought process, was the canyon, the river canyon. I mean, people are out there camping and doing, whatever, and there's a sign that's way over there that nobody ever sees, so the whole thought process behind this was to get these signs where people would actually see them. And so whatever's going on there down there now, or whatever's going on in any of the open space stuff, I can't really blame the public, because there's no notification for them to understand what they can and can't do.
I can tell you that I had an incident report last week. All of our signs in Brunswick Canyon have been stolen or vandalized.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me in the least.
So there aren't anything out there right now.
Is the gate working back there now, so that it's closed at night?
The gate is not, right now the city's, we're working on an agreement with the new pit owner to try to negotiate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's not the city's gate right now, so we can't activate that yet.
That's a bit disheartening to hear about the signs that have been put up. Would it be something that perhaps Greg could summarize in a memo or email to the committee members, just kind of the status of the sign implementation and just a general idea to respond to some of Jerry's questions, just to kind of give us all something to kind of look at? And I realize it's difficult and involved, but at the same time, it really helps if we can see progress and feel progress, and we can also, hopefully, any of us that are out and about, if we know where signs are being vandalized, we can keep maybe a little closer eye out for issues or activities that maybe should be reported.
We'd be happy to do that. And then that way we can notify you of all the places we've either replaced and implemented the new sign plan and any new locations.
I'd kind of see a priority list.
Okay.
I mean, how you decide what's going where and when, please.
No problem.
Yes, Margie.
I was thinking along the lines of a priority list, like Member Masad mentioned, but I wonder how difficult it would be to give us a list or a cost amount for signage per open space property, so that we could, we're going to be looking at the budget and perhaps moving some money to pay for a new truck and UTV. Could we also move some money to move forward on select properties?
Yeah, I think within the budget, we have the authority to work with staff if it's not a significant amount of money. I hate to spend too much time calculating costs if it takes away from actually implementing the signs.
Yeah, and while we have a line item budget, it really matters the bottom line. I think your key areas like land acquisition, those big chunks that are so important, the other areas we have some flexibility to spend more money on signs if we need to do that. So if we can work together on the priorities and the implementation, I think that's probably a higher priority. Some locations are going to cost more than others, like you were alluding to. Some locations are just more difficult, like Prison Hill. I mean, you could spend our entire budget on signage for that location, and we wouldn't want to do that. So we want to try to pick the most thoughtful locations first. But we do deal with vandalism, on a daily basis. This is not a weekly basis throughout the entire park system. So it's very costly. It's very significant. We try to recover what we can using our insurance funds and things like that, so it doesn't affect the open space budget bottom line. But it is a real reality at every location, but the canyons in particular are a real challenge.
Just as a comment, maybe to help move some of the implementation of the signage plan forward without making a huge dent in the budget. I always try to look at the low-hanging fruit, and I recall the color scheme that that everybody was interested and approved between open space and parks. I wonder if one of the things that we could just do incrementally to help move this forward is to just do all the painting on the monuments and implement the color scheme between parks and open space. That doesn't seem like it should be too cost prohibitive to at least do that piece.
Donna?
Yeah, I'm thinking too that maybe we should spend a little time investing in a public information campaign that this is a big problem, that tagging and removing of our signs and everything, and how much it's costing the citizens, so that maybe we can get more of a citizens' help on this as far as, keeping an eye out and being more proactive. I mean, I'm willing to talk to Terry Vance. I'm sure she would do an article on it. And Carson now probably would do an article on it, and maybe some posts on the website, on the Facebook page, about what's happening and getting the public interested in helping us.
We've been doing a lot of PR campaigns this last year. We have one coming out about picking up after your pets. We have an animation video coming out about that, and some other things that our AmeriCorps has been working on. So we might be able to do a video, and we've actually had more reach from the videos than we have from a press release or some of the standard media. But we can definitely get that out and try to get that message out. I know it's something that everybody struggles with. We're not the only agency, but it is a real reality, and making sure that people are aware and looking at their surroundings, and if they see something, they need to report it right away, because typically after a call goes in, by the time you get out there, they're not there anymore. So it's really difficult to catch them. But the sheriff's office is so supportive of us, and we have caught people in the past, and they have been prosecuted.
Full prosecution. I think it's probably the sense of the committee that we wouldn't want the budget for signage materials to get in the way of the activities of our maintenance coordinator and seasonals and that sort of thing, just because it is a big factor, but we're proud of our open space, and I think the community is too. So anything we can do to keep that moving forward, I think would be great.
I will make sure to follow up with staff, and we'll get you the information that you requested.
Thanks, Jen. Are there any other comments regarding item 4A on the working groups? Okay. Director's report. Did you have anything to add to what we've discussed already, Jennifer?
I think we've covered a lot, but I'm just going to hit a couple things. We have hired our open space maintenance coordinator, and I just want to, Jared Whitaker is his name, and he's been just hitting the ground running. He's amazing, and we're so happy to have him here. I also wanted to let you know that we did hire our AmeriCorps Vista volunteer coordinator. We've been trying for a year to get someone on. And I'm so excited to have her here. Her name's Chelsea. She just started this last week. So we're hopeful to have her here in the future and really be able to help where, we don't have the staff resources to coordinate volunteers and get more work on the ground. Open Space also hired a Great Basin Institute intern. His name's Joey, and he's here for 13 weeks. And he came with a vehicle, which we're so excited about because we don't have a lot of them. But he's working for Lindsay and really helping out with so many different projects. Really amazing talent, outreach, and education. We're happy to have him here as well. And they are both living at Governor's Field, in the apartment that we've been able to provide through free housing for three AmeriCorps. So it's really great that we have that resource available. Any questions on recruitments before I move on? Okay. One grant update. I did email this out to Chairman Scott, but the Ham property was scored #1 for Land and Water Conservation Fund throughout the state. There were $1.7 million in requests, only $600,000 available. So we are, so proud of the volunteers that helped put that application together, and the staff just kind of cleaned it up at the end. But it was really an amazing effort. So we're working with Land and Water. I had a meeting with State Parks about that today. So the Ham acquisition is moving forward. Nevada Land Trust is in contract with the owners, and we'll be looking to go to the Board of Supervisors hopefully in September, October at the latest to finalize that. So I'll keep you updated where we go. I don't want to give you a specific date just in case something changes with the owners or the grant source and all of that, but it's moving right along.
That's great. That's encouraging. There was a lot of support for that.
Do we have an assessed value for that property yet?
We do, but I can't say it right now.
Okay. Anything further on 4B?
A couple other things. I just did give you some late material. I wanted you to have a couple pieces from the budget that was approved. So you have what the department received for capital improvement requests, and also what the department received for supplemental requests. And supplemental requests are added to our operating budget. And while it's not typically part of the open space budget, there are a lot of things in there that do impact and support open space. One, for example, is our park ranger program. Part of the funding, we have one park ranger that's funded out of the general fund, but we never had a budget to support him or his efforts. So we do have a uniform allowance now for him, as well as for outreach and education programs that all of the AmeriCorps have started. So that's been added to the general fund. So just a couple things I wanted to highlight in there for you that was approved as part of the budget.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I know some of the stuff that goes to parks directly or indirectly benefits open space as well. So thank you for the bigger picture.
And then you do have a map. This item was actually pulled from this Thursday's Board of Supervisors agenda, but just so you have it available for the future, Paiute Pipeline is requesting easements from the city. There's 2 segments of their pipeline that they're proposing. This was going to go to the board this Thursday, but I assume it'll probably come out in July. If there's any further updates between now and then, I'll email that out to you if you wanted to provide any public comment. Those easements would have to be, purchased, and there's a whole process that would have to go through, but I just wanted to make you aware of where those proposed locations are. They're primarily in the right-of-way, so there's not too much impact, which is great, but I just wanted to make you aware of that project because it is adjacent to some open space.
Thank you. Any public comment? All right. Any further update on 4C, staff update on activities, projects, and you did mention some grants, the grant earlier on. Anything to add to that, Jen? Okay. Any committee comments or questions? Public comments? Okay. 4D, somewhat similar to others. Any updates, Jen, on projects and grants through other areas, other open space areas besides what we've talked about?
No updates.
Okay. Committee comments, questions? Public comments? Okay. Item 4E, activities related to trail projects managed by open space. We've touched on that indirectly or directly in different agenda items. Did you have anything, Jennifer, to add?
Mr. Chair, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I did want to just acknowledge the National Trails Day and what a success it was. We had the mayor out there, Supervisor Aboud was there. We had over 50 volunteers building the Foothill Trail. I was there. It was so much fun. Member Iverson was here. We did an amazing amount in just a short amount of time, and I encourage you guys to go up to the Foothill Trail right behind the hospital and check it out. It has really amazing views.
Great, thank you. And Donna, thank you for your continuing efforts as an active member of a number of organizations. Any other questions or comments from the committee on 4E? Public comments? Okay, item 5, members' announcements and requests for information. Donna.
I would just like to give you an update on the grant that we received for the Virginian Truckee project from National Park Services, the RTCA grant. We got just a small grant because when they looked at it, they didn't give us the whole grant, the whole assistance grant, because when they looked at it, they thought, well, there really isn't enough support for it. In the meantime, in putting together the first initial meeting and everything, by the time we got to the meeting, up to that point, Barbara Rice, Deborah, who is the one who's helping us from Park Services, talked to her boss, Barbara Rice, and they decided that there was enough public support that they are going to extend that. We only had up to one meeting. We're going to have now a second meeting. The first meeting was very well attended. Don't you agree, Jeremy? And it was extremely positive. In 3 hours, I did not one time hear anybody say, oh, this is too hard, we can't do that, that's gone. All I heard was, oh, this is a challenge, but we can do this. And we had Douglas County, Washoe County, Reno, NDOT, Bentley, the Railroad Museum, who else was, Carson City. Mike Drews.
Juan Guzman was there.
Yeah, so CVTA was also represented, and basically the group did a rough map for about 54 miles of path. Our next meeting, we were going to hold it in July, but a couple of key players couldn't make it, and we're still trying to get Story County. They're supposedly on board, but getting somebody there to the meeting has been an issue. Lyon County is a real issue. I am going to reach out. Juan's going to reach out to Story County. I'm reaching out directly to Lyon County. I have Jeff Page, I think is the name I have, and I'm going to call and ask for a sit-down meeting so I can really talk to him face-to-face about this. If anybody knows of somebody else in Lyon County that would be better to talk to, please let me know. The other thing is we've now invited SHPO. State Parks actually heard about it and has contacted me and wants to be a part of the project because they've got a plan on the books to build a trail connecting Washoe and Dayton State Parks. And I says, well, we got this big piece. You just have to do your little piece if you help us with our big piece. So they're very excited about it. SHPO, I haven't heard a response from them yet. I think that's it. But I'm very excited about the reaction. It's after 10 years of hearing, forget about it, all of a sudden it's like a total turnaround and everybody's going, yes, let's do this.
That's great, and, you know, that, it extends what Carson City Open Space can do, and becomes more of an inter-county effort, which is great, Donna. Thank you for your help on that and your activity.
This is going to be my swan song. I turned 70 yesterday, so.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, exactly. Any other member announcements? Items for discussion? Okay, any public comment? All right, future agenda items. We've talked about a couple, some of that stuff, like, for example, what we talked about, Jennifer, on signage. That can be done probably with a memo or an email to staff. Doesn't necessarily have to be a agenda item for next time. I think we can get that moving forward, and we have Jeremy and Joanne working a little bit on naming. Alan and Margie working together, continuing to follow up on that project. So.
And you wanted the work plan to come back? And,
Yes.
And we'll table the Friends of Silver Saddle
Yes, we'll
presentation.
give them a rain check.
Any other items that you'd like to see on the next agenda?
I don't know if it's 2 months and that might not be soon, it might be too soon, but anything you can learn about wildlife inventories in the southern portion of the Prison Hill would be really useful for the OHV planning and for just general principles.
We'll have staff look into that and we can send an email out to the committee. And then we'll make sure that, our consultants on that project have that information as well.
Okay, any final public comment? All right, committee comment? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I've been talking all night. I move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
No second.
No second? We don't need a second for that, no? Chairman's prerogative.
Okay, great.
Congratulations on your reelection.